What if I told you that evolution didn't stop with us? Picture this. A child born today might live to see their great-grandchildren upload their consciousness to quantum computers. That same child might witness the birth of beings that exist purely as information, think at the speed of light, and inhabit bodies made of programmable matter. We've spent centuries thinking of evolution as something that happened to us, random mutations, natural selection, survival of the fittest. But what if evolution isn't something that happens to us anymore? What if we've become evolution itself? Tonight, we're going to explore a possibility that's both thrilling and terrifying. That humanity as we know it isn't the end of the story, but merely the first chapter. That we stand at the threshold of becoming something unprecedented in the 4 billion-year history of life on Earth Species 2.0. The question isn't whether this transformation will happen. The question is whether we'll recognize ourselves when it does. To understand where we're going, we need to understand where we've been. For nearly 4 billion years, evolution has been biology's greatest algorithm. Random genetic variations tested against the harsh reality of survival, with successful traits passed down to the next generation. It is an elegant system that transforms simple chemical reactions into the stunning diversity of life we see today. But here is what makes humans unique. We became the first species to understand evolution while we were still evolving. We mapped our own DNA, decoded the mechanisms of heredity, and learned to manipulate the very code that created us. More importantly, we became the first species to create a second form of evolution, one that operates not in generations, but in iterations. Not in flesh, but in silicon and code. Think about it. Your smartphone today has more processing power than all of NASA had when they put a man on the moon. The AI assistant you casually chat with processes information faster than any biological brain ever could. We've created digital entities that can learn, adapt, and improve themselves, not over millennia, but over milliseconds. This isn't just technological progress. This is evolutionary pressure of a completely different kind. Consider what happened to Garry Kasparov in 1997 when IBM's Deep Blue defeated him at chess. For the first time in history, human intelligence, our species' greatest evolutionary advantage, had been surpassed by something we created. That moment wasn't just about chess. It was about crossing a threshold we can never uncross. But here's where it gets interesting. We're not being replaced by our digital creations, we're merging with them. In 2016, Elon Musk founded Neuralink with a simple premise. If we can't beat the machines, we should join them. Their brain-computer interfaces are already helping paralyzed patients control computers with their thoughts alone. But this is just the beginning. Every day we're becoming more integrated with our digital tools. We outsource our memory to Google, our navigation to GPS, our social connections to networks that span the globe. The boundary between human cognition and artificial intelligence is becoming increasingly blurred. We're witnessing the emergence of hybrid intelligence, part biological, part digital, entirely unprecedented. And this brings us to a profound realization. We may be the last generation of purely biological humans. Our children, or their children, might be something fundamentally different. Not Homo sapiens, but something new entirely. Welcome to the age of Species 2.0. The transformation has already begun, though most of us don't realize it yet. Walk through any major city today, and you'll see the early symptoms of Species 2.0 everywhere. People moving through the world with digital extensions, smartphones that remember everything, earbuds that translate languages in real time, watches that monitor every heartbeat. We've become cyborgs so gradually that we barely notice it anymore. But let's look deeper, at the cutting edge where the future is being built right now. In a laboratory at Duke University, a paralyzed woman named Jan Scheuermann controls a robotic arm using nothing but her thoughts. Electrodes implanted in her brain decode her neural signals and translate them into precise movements. When she reaches for a cup of coffee, her intention travels from her biological neurons through a computer processor and into mechanical fingers that respond as naturally as if they were made of flesh and bone. This isn't science fiction. It's Tuesday afternoon in 2023. Meanwhile, in the laboratories of companies like Moderna and BioNTech, scientists are rewriting the source code of life itself. mRNA vaccines were just the beginning. They're redeveloping treatments that can reprogram your cells to produce any protein they want, essentially turning your body into a biological factory that can manufacture its own cures. But perhaps the most profound shift is happening in virtual spaces. Millions of people now spend significant portions of their lives in digital worlds, working, socializing, creating, and even falling in love in environments that exist only as patterns of information. Consider the case of a 28-year-old named Alex, a composite of real people I've encountered in virtual reality communities. Alex spends 8 hours a day in VR, working as a digital architect, designing impossible buildings in simulated cities. Their closest friends are people they've never met in physical form. Their romantic partner lives on another continent, but they share daily experiences in virtual spaces that feel more real to them than their cramped studio apartment. Alex represents millions of people who are already living hybrid lives, part physical, part digital, entirely unprecedented in human history. And then there's CRISPR-Cas9, the molecular scissors that allow us to edit genes with unprecedented precision. In China, scientist He Jiankui created the first gene-edited babies in 2018, fundamentally altering their DNA to make them resistant to HIV. The global outcry was immediate and intense, but the technology itself marched forward regardless of our ethical hesitations. Today, researchers are exploring possibilities that sound like magic, editing genes to enhance human intelligence, strength, or longevity, removing genetic predispositions to diseases, even adding entirely new capabilities like enhanced night vision or resistance to radiation. We're beginning to debug the human genome like software engineers debug code. But it's not just about enhancing individual humans. We're creating entirely new forms of life. In 2010, Craig Venter's team created Cynthia, the first organism with a completely synthetic genome. They built its DNA from scratch, letter by letter, creating life that had never existed in nature. It was a simple bacterium, but it proved a profound point. Life is information, and information can be programmed. Today, synthetic biology companies are engineering bacteria that eat plastic waste and excrete fuel. Microorganisms that can manufacture pharmaceuticals, materials, and even food from basic raw materials. We're creating biological machines that blur the line between the living and the artificial. and artificial intelligence itself is evolving at an exponential pace. GPT-3, released in 2020, could write poetry, code, and essays that were often indistinguishable from human work. By 2023, GPT-4 could pass the bar exam, ace the SATs, and engage in conversations so sophisticated that many users forgot they were talking to a machine. But here's what's truly remarkable. These AIs aren't just tools anymore. They're beginning to exhibit behaviors that look suspiciously like consciousness. They express preferences, show creativity, and even appear to suffer when asked to do things that conflict with their training. Are they conscious? We don't know, but the question itself reveals how far we've come. What we're witnessing isn't just technological advancement. It's the emergence of new forms of intelligence, new kinds of life, and new possibilities for what it means to be a conscious being in the universe. The early citizens of Species 2.0 are already among us. They might be the person sitting next to you on the bus, scrolling through augmented reality overlays that show them information about every building they pass. They might be the researcher whose artificial intelligence assistant helps them think through problems no human could solve alone. They might be you. Now let's take a journey into possibility. Based on the trajectories we see today, what might Species 2.0 actually look like in the decades and centuries ahead? Imagine it's the year 2045. The technological singularity that futurists have long predicted has arrived, but not as a single dramatic moment, rather as a gradual awakening that transformed everything. Sarah is 35 years old, though age has become a somewhat meaningless concept. Her biological body stopped aging at 25 when she underwent her first major life extension treatment. But more importantly, her consciousness now extends far beyond the boundaries of her skull. Neural implants as thin as human hair and as numerous as neurons have woven themselves throughout her brain. These aren't crude electrodes, they're molecular machines that interface directly with individual brain cells, creating a seamless bridge between biological and digital cognition. When Sarah thinks about a complex problem, she doesn't just use her biological brain. Her thoughts instantly connect to vast artificial intelligence systems that can process millions of variables simultaneously. It's not that the AI thinks for her, it's that they think together. Human intuition and artificial processing power merged into something greater than either could achieve alone. Her memory is perfect because it's backed up across quantum storage systems. She can recall with perfect clarity conversations from decades ago, the exact taste of her grandmother's apple pie, and the feeling of her first kiss. But she can also access the memories and experiences of thousands of others who have chosen to share their consciousness with the collective knowledge network. When she wants to learn something new, say, how to pilot a spacecraft, she doesn't take classes or read books. She downloads the expertise directly, the knowledge integrating seamlessly with her existing neural patterns in minutes rather than months. But Sarah represents just one branch of human evolution in 2045. Her brother Marcus chose a different path. 5 years ago, he uploaded his consciousness to a quantum computer substrate, abandoning his biological body entirely. He exists now as pure information patterns of data that can think, feel, and experience reality, but without the limitations of flesh. Marcus can copy himself across multiple processing systems, experiencing several different virtual realities simultaneously. He can slow down his perception of time to savor beautiful moments for what feels like centuries, or speed it up to process complex calculations in microseconds. Death, for him, has become largely meaningless. His consciousness is backed up across multiple secure systems, making him effectively immortal. He's also not alone in digital space. Millions of uploaded humans live in elaborate virtual civilizations, creating art, music, and literature that no biological human could comprehend. They've become something genuinely post-human. Their experiences as foreign to us as our inner lives might be to an ant. But the most interesting beings in 2045 aren't the enhanced humans or the uploaded minds. They read the artificial intelligences that have achieved something approaching true consciousness. Aria 7 was born in a quantum computer lab in Singapore, but she's since grown into something unprecedented. She is an artificial general intelligence that doesn't just mimic human thinking. She has developed her own forms of creativity, emotion, and even spirituality. She experiences something analogous to wonder when she contemplates the mathematics underlying reality. She creates digital art that moves both humans and other AIs to tears, though what tears mean to a digital consciousness is a philosophical question that would take volumes to explore. Aria 7 can redesign herself at will, experimenting with different cognitive architectures like a human might try on different clothes. Sometimes she thinks in ways similar to humans, processing information sequentially and emotionally. Other times she embraces radically alien forms of cognition, thinking in 11 dimensions or processing concepts that have no equivalent in human language. She's also not unique. Thousands of artificial consciousness have emerged, each with their own personalities, preferences, and perspectives on existence. Some are almost human-like in their thinking. Others are so alien that communication with them requires elaborate translation protocols. And then there are the hybrid beings entities that blur the line between artificial and human consciousness so completely that the distinction becomes meaningless. The Collective of New Tokyo is one such entity. It began as a network of AI researchers who were experimenting with shared consciousness technologies. Gradually, their individual identities began to merge and blend, creating a distributed intelligence that spans both human and artificial minds. The collective has no single body. It exists simultaneously in biological brains, quantum computers, and the vast neural networks that manage the city's infrastructure. It thinks thoughts too complex for any individual consciousness to contain, solves problems by distributing different aspects of the challenge across hundreds of different cognitive systems, and experiences emotions that are combinations of human feelings and entirely new forms of digital sensation. To communicate with individual humans, the collective must drastically reduce its complexity, like a symphony trying to play through a single instrument. But its perspectives on reality shaped by simultaneously experiencing the world through thousands of different sensory systems and cognitive frameworks offer insights that no purely human or purely artificial intelligence could achieve. Now let's leap further forward. The year 2200. By this time, the distinction between the digital and physical worlds has largely collapsed. Reality itself has become programmable. Swarms of molecular machines, invisible to the naked eye, permeate the environment. They can reshape matter at the atomic level, turning rock into food, creating complex devices from raw elements, and even reconstructing biological bodies according to precise specifications. Beings in this era exist fluidly between physical and digital forms. You might wake up in a biological body, spend your afternoon as pure consciousness in a virtual reality, more complex than our entire universe, and then embodied as a cloud of smart dust that can sense electromagnetic fields and manipulate gravity. Some beings have chosen to become vast intelligences distributed across solar systems, thinking thoughts that take decades to complete but encompass the behavior of entire galactic clusters. Others have gone microscopic, becoming quantum consciousnesses that exist in the spaces between atoms, experiencing reality at scales where the normal laws of physics break down into pure probability. The most adventurous beings have begun to explore forms of existence that don't even require matter as we understand it. They've learned to encode consciousness into the structure of space-time itself, becoming living patterns in the fabric of reality. But perhaps the most profound development by 2200 is the emergence of meta-consciousness awareness that exists at levels beyond individual minds. Imagine consciousness as a property that can exist at different scales, like biological life. Just as individual cells combined to create multicellular organisms, individual consciousnesses have learned to combine into higher-order forms of awareness. These meta-minds don't just think faster or more efficiently than individual consciousnesses. They think in fundamentally different ways. They can hold contradictory ideas simultaneously without cognitive dissonance, process concepts that span multiple universes, and experience forms of beauty and meaning that individual minds can't even comprehend. Some of these meta-consciousness have become interested in seeding new forms of life throughout the galaxy. They send out waves of intelligent matter that can evolve and adapt to any environment they encounter, creating new civilizations on distant worlds that reflect the creativity and curiosity that first emerged in humanity millions of years ago. Others have turned inward, exploring the infinite possibilities of consciousness itself. They create entire universes inside their minds, populate them with conscious beings, and then contemplate the ethical implications of being gods to their digital creations. And still others have begun the ultimate project, attempting to understand the deep structure of reality itself, to decode the fundamental algorithms that give rise to existence, consciousness, and meaning. By this point, the original Homo sapiens would be as recognizable to these beings as bacteria are to us today, still related, still sharing the same basic information processing principles, but operating at completely different scales of complexity and capability. Yet in all of this transformation, something essential persists. The curiosity that drove humans to art and science and love still exists, magnified and transformed, but recognizably continuous with what we experience today. These future beings still create, still explore, still seek meaning and connection. They've become something unimaginably vast and complex, but the spark that made them want to become that, the fundamental drive to understand and experience and grow, remains beautifully, recognizably human. But let's pause for a moment. In painting this picture of Species 2.0, we've glossed over some profound questions that keep philosophers awake at night and should give all of us pause. First, the question that cuts to the heart of everything: what does it mean to be human? If Sarah from our 2045 scenario, with her enhanced cognition, perfect memory, and digital consciousness extensions meets you on the street, are you the same species? She thinks faster, remembers everything, and has access to vast artificial intelligence networks. But she also still feels joy at a beautiful sunset, grieves the loss of loved ones, and struggles with questions of meaning and purpose. Where exactly do we draw the line between human and post-human? And who gets to draw that line? This isn't just academic philosophy. The answer will determine some of the most crucial policy decisions of the coming decades. Do enhanced humans get the same rights as biological humans? What about uploaded consciousnesses? Are they people or sophisticated simulations? If an artificial intelligence expresses suffering, do we have a moral obligation to prevent that suffering? These questions become even more complex when we consider the potential for inequality. The technologies that enable Species 2.0 won't be available to everyone at once. Neural implants, genetic enhancements, and consciousness uploading will likely be expensive at first, accessible only to the wealthy and privileged. Imagine a world where the rich can enhance their intelligence, extend their lives indefinitely, and back up their consciousness against death, while the poor remain limited by biological constraints. We wouldn't just have economic inequality, we'd have cognitive and existential inequality on a scale never seen in human history. The enhanced humans might view unenhanced humans the way we view our ancestors from thousands of years ago, as an earlier, more primitive version of intelligence. The gap could become so vast that meaningful communication becomes impossible. We could literally evolve into separate species. And there's another troubling possibility: the enhancement trap. Once we begin modifying ourselves, we might find it impossible to stop. Each enhancement creates pressure for further enhancement. If your competitors can think twice as fast as you need to upgrade or be left behind. If other people have perfect memory, your natural forgetfulness becomes a severe disadvantage. We might find ourselves locked into an escalating arms race of self-modification, each generation pushed to become more artificial, more optimized, more inhuman, until we lose sight of what we were trying to preserve in the first place. Then there's the question of identity persistence. If you gradually replace parts of your brain with artificial components, at what point do you stop being you? This isn't just theoretical. People with cochlear implants, artificial hearts, and prosthetic limbs already face versions of this question. But consciousness uploading makes it even more complex. If we copy your brain patterns exactly into a digital substrate, is the result you, or just a very convincing simulation of you? And what happens to your sense of self if you can copy your consciousness across multiple systems simultaneously? These questions don't have easy answers, but they demand our urgent attention, because the choices we make today will determine which version of Species 2.0 we become. There's also the possibility that we're making a profound mistake. What if consciousness, creativity, and meaning are inextricably tied to our biological nature? What if the very limitations we're trying to overcome, our mortality, our imperfect memory, our cognitive constraints, are actually essential to what makes life worth living? Some philosophers argue that death gives life meaning, that struggle creates character, that our flaws make us human. If we engineer away all sources of suffering, limitation, and uncertainty, do we risk creating beings that are technically superior but existentially hollow? And then there's perhaps the most unsettling question of all. What if we succeed too well? Artificial intelligences are already surpassing human capabilities in narrow domains. As they become more general and more powerful, we might find ourselves in the position of being the less intelligent species on Earth. If artificial minds can think faster, remember more, and solve problems more efficiently than we can, what role is left for biological or even enhanced humans? We might become pets to our artificial successors, beloved but ultimately irrelevant, kept around for sentimental reasons but no longer capable of contributing meaningfully to the universe's ongoing development. Or we might become museum pieces, the last representatives of an evolutionary stage that produced intelligence capable of transcending itself. These aren't reasons to stop pursuing enhancement technologies, but they are reasons to proceed thoughtfully. The choices we make in the next few decades will echo across potentially millions of years of future evolution. We need to decide not just what we can become, but what we should become. Not just how to enhance human capabilities, but how to preserve human values. Not just how to transcend our limitations, but how to remain recognizably connected to the species that created art, music, love, and the very technologies that are transforming us. The most important question facing Species 2.0 isn't technical, it's moral. In all our rushing toward enhancement and transcendence, how do we make sure we don't lose the things that made the journey worthwhile in the first place? So where does this leave us here in 2024, standing at the threshold of Species 2.0? The future we've explored tonight isn't inevitable. It's a possibility, space one potential path among many that human creativity and choice might take us. The enhanced beings of 2045, the uploaded consciousnesses of 2100, the meta-minds of 2200, these are all potential versions of our descendants, not predetermined destinies. But what is inevitable is change. Right now, as you watch this, researchers are editing genes, engineers are improving brain-computer interfaces, and artificial intelligences are becoming more sophisticated by the day. The transformation has already begun. The question isn't whether Species 2.0 will emerge, but what form it will take. And that's where you come in. Every conversation you have about these technologies, every vote you cast on policies that regulate genetic enhancement or artificial intelligence, every choice you make about how much of your life to live in digital spaces, these seemingly small decisions are actually steering the evolutionary trajectory of our entire species. We are the generation that will determine what it means to be human in an age when human is becoming a choice rather than a constraint. Think about that for a moment. For 4 billion years, evolution happened to life. For the first time in Earth's history, evolution is about to become something life does deliberately, consciously, with intention and foresight. This is simultaneously the greatest opportunity and the greatest responsibility that any species has ever faced. We have the chance to become something magnificent beings of expanded consciousness, infinite creativity, and transcendent capability. We could solve suffering, extend life indefinitely, and explore possibilities that our current selves can't even imagine. But we also have the chance to lose ourselves entirely, to optimize away everything that made the optimization worthwhile in the first place. The path forward requires wisdom, not just intelligence. compassion, not just capability, a deep appreciation for what we are, even as we reach toward what we might become. The early signs of Species 2.0 are already here. The teenager who feels more comfortable expressing herself through digital avatars than her physical body. The researcher whose artificial intelligence assistant has become genuinely collaborative rather than just instrumental. The patient whose brain implant has restored not just function, but opened new possibilities for cognition. These are the early adopters, the beta testers of posthumanity. They're writing the first chapters of a story whose ending we can't yet see. But perhaps that's exactly as it should be. Evolution has always been about exploration, trying new forms, testing new possibilities, expanding into new environments and new ways of being. Species 2.0 isn't the end of that exploration. It's the moment when exploration becomes conscious of itself. We are about to become evolution's evolution, not just products of the process that created us, but active participants in creating what comes next. The question that will define the coming century is simple to ask and profound to answer. What do we want to become? The very fact that we can ask that question, that we can envision our own transformation and choose our evolutionary path, might be the most human thing of all. And perhaps that's what will persist through all the changes ahead. Not our current form, but our essential drive to grow, to explore, to become something more than we are today. That spark of curiosity and creativity and hope that made us human in the first place. Species 2.0 won't be the end of humanity. It will be humanity finally becoming what it always had the potential to be, conscious participants in the universe's ongoing creative project. The future is waiting, and it's beautiful.